Welcome to the podcast, my friends. Today we have a guest who is an entrepreneur, an investor, a technology enthusiast. He is also the principal consultant, architect, and CTO of TetraNoodle. We have Manuj Aggarwal. How's it going, Manuj?
Not bad. How about yourself?
I'm doing great.
Great.
So, first of all, thank you for being here and sharing your knowledge with the audience.
No, thanks a lot for having me. I'm so excited.
So, I want to start with kind of who you are and how you started your career at the age of 15,
Sure.
working at a factory. Let us know kind of how many hours you had to work there and how much money you were making back then.
Yeah, that was tough life. I was working about 12 hours a day and doing my schooling, my education, whatever I could afford at that time. And I was getting paid about $2 a day. So that was like $60 a month. And there was fun times, like really hot summers and really grueling work.
Wow, man, oh man. So $60 a month. You know, I thought I had it bad when I started, and that was like many, many years ago too, back in Europe. But yeah, mine was about 10 times that, which is still terrible for today's standards. But yeah.
Well, let me clarify it for the audience. But $60 obviously when you convert it, it sounds quite less, but it's not a huge amount of money. But the living expenses in India are not comparable to Western countries, and this is like 20 years ago. So you could survive, on $2 a day, but that's sort of bare minimum survival, like not too much, but yeah, it's still enough to get by.
Exactly. So, how did you manage to acquire your education?
Yeah. So, being in that situation, I was trying to figure out, okay, what do I do? What resources do I have that I can use to my advantage? And the only thing that I had was my intellect, my education. And since I didn't have a lot of resources, I sort of got the best education that I could afford, which was not something that I was capable of based on my academic record and everything, but whatever I could afford. And then that was based on my current profession, which is technology. I fell in love with computers and software after I finished my high school. So after my bachelor's degree, I took I got a master's degree in IT, and rest is history. Basically, I started working at a startup, and then it just so happened that I met my wife during one of those computer programming courses, and we decided to get married. And then after a year of marriage, we decided to move to Canada. And then in Canada, I worked for several large corporations and startups. This was back in year around 2000 when the dot-com boom was at its height. So it was an exciting time, and I got to learn a lot working on some really exciting projects during that time. But the rise was a lot of fun. But when it all crashed, I still remember those days when everybody was being laid off one by one, and that's another experience to go through. And that experience itself taught me a lot of things. That is to not count on anything being permanent. Anything can be sort of taken away from underneath you. So you got to be prepared, and you got to have versatility in your skill sets, as well as patience in when things don't work out as you expect them to work out.
It's pretty impressive. So how was it, the transition moving from India? You moved directly to Canada, to Vancouver, right?
Yeah,
that's right. Vancouver is known to having, I don't know, like 10 grand per square foot every house. How was that?
Yeah, I mean, Vancouver is, if people know about the geography of Canada, like it's on the It's on the western side of Canada, and it's a mild weather. The rest of the country gets really harsh weather during wintertime, like really really cold, and during summertime really hot. But Vancouver is surrounded by ocean, and it's pretty mild weather. So we picked Vancouver for particularly that reason. And those days, 20 years ago, it was not that expensive. It was not like a well-known city around the world where people come in to invest and buy real estate. It was manageable, and as I said, I was working here during the dot-com boom, and immediately as within 2 months of me landing in Canada, I got a job as a junior programmer, and I think it paid me like $200 a month or something, and that was a huge difference from $60 a month, and that was amazing. I think we got we were able to live life nicely until slowly the real estate prices started to go high, and then a lot has changed in 20 years. So today it's kind of really hard for somebody who comes into the country and tries to establish themselves because of how expensive it is here. But luckily, at that time it was manageable, and since I had that foundation, it is still manageable, but it is obviously getting quite expensive.
That's very good. So I know exactly when you mentioned about the other provinces in Canada and how harsh the weather can be. I know exactly how that is because I spent 10 years in Fort McMurray in Alberta.
Oh, wow.
So I had lots of minus 50 days.
My goodness, all the power to you. I don't think I can survive that.
No, that's very painful there.
Mm-hmm.
So now, when it comes to TetraNoodle, did you found TetraNoodle?
That's right. So right after the dot-com boom and bust, explained it to you, what I realized was that this notion of having security in your permanent job is a myth. So because a lot can change and a lot can happen, and you are it's just best that you take control of your own career and your life. So I started this consulting company. Back then it was called Spider Communications, and the name Spider came from the World Wide Web. I thought it was a clever thing, but then in around 2010 or so, like people started asking me, the name didn't sound right, so I changed it to TetraNoodle. Again, the name is sort of has a history. It was named because I was sitting in a restaurant called Noodle Box when the name came to me. So I said, okay, let's call it that after that restaurant. And so basically what it is a consulting company and training company. So I provide consulting services on software and IT and everything related to technology and product. And also we train software engineers, and I also mentor entrepreneurs who want to launch their tech startups.
And I see something that said that you train engineers in cutting edge technologies. And that just sounds so cool. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So as I said, when I was starting my career, it was really hard at that time to find information, find mentors, find even the books used to cost a lot of money. There were no blogs, no YouTube, no nothing. And I had to learn everything the hard way. And now when I see a lot of engineers coming out of the university, they have a lot of theoretical knowledge, which generally is quite behind from what is happening in the real life in the business world. So they have to unlearn quite a few things and learn how to do things properly. So one of my passions is sharing all this knowledge, especially for engineers who are just still learning, or they feel stuck. They don't know how to rise in their career, how to take the next step. So I provide all this training specifically on the latest and greatest technologies. And there are a lot of these technologies coming up these days, blockchain and AI and machine learning. All these are very exciting technologies, and people need to understand and learn for the the kind of jobs that are coming up in the next phase. So I do that, and it's a lot of fun sharing that knowledge. And as they say, the best way to learn is to teach. So I also, through this process, I also learn a lot of things as I go through this process.
That is true. I find that to be true. Yeah, when you're teaching, you learn probably at a faster pace than the people that are learning.
Exactly.
So when it comes to TetraNoodle, you said it's software consulting company. So can you explain exactly what that means? Does that mean if I don't know, if I have a software, you will try to fix something in my code, or you are going to fix my software company?
So the way that I have, since I have 20 years of experience working on various projects, I can sort of start at any point. So right from a point where a founder or an entrepreneur comes up with an idea about tech startup, they don't know what to do about that idea. What's the next step to take? But they know they want to execute, they want to build it. I can collaborate with them and sort of guide them through the process, right up to the point where the product is launched and they have some customers paying for the product. So that's the end-to-end sort of spectrum of what I can do. But otherwise, I've also worked with entrepreneurs who have already launched their startups, and they're running into some execution problems where the software is not working, or they don't have traction, or whatever the case is. I can come in and have a look at their situation and then help them out, if I can. In some cases, I can't because, whatever they're doing, it's outside the realm of expertise that I have. But in most cases, I can. If it's related to technology, I can help.
All right. So how do you help bootstrap tech startups?
Yeah. So, there are a lot of misconceptions lately that media is feeding entrepreneurs and Silicon Valley is feeding entrepreneurs. And that is to launch a tech company, you need to raise millions and millions of dollars. And, that may be true if your company is, growing and it's bringing in revenue. But right at the beginning of the tech startup, I don't think it makes sense to raise a lot of money because you don't really know how much money, first of all, what kind of product will sell, what kind of revenue you'll get, and moreover, you end up giving a lot of equity if you start to raise right at the beginning of your startup. So what happens in that case is, you're practically giving away your freedom to the VC or the angel investor who's investing in you, and now they end up calling the shots rather than you. So with bootstrapping, the idea is that you do things with pragmatic method, and you start small. You figure out exactly what people want. You refine the idea, prototype it, and get more feedback, and go through several iterations. All the while keeping the expenses very low, using techniques like outsourcing for minimizing your burn rate. Using prototyping rather than building elaborate products even without knowing what the public wants. So all this is sort of is a process, is a framework that I follow, and using that you can pretty much bootstrap your first version of your product with a few tens of thousands of dollars. So instead of millions of dollars, you can bootstrap with say anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000 and bring the product to the market, get some revenue, prove that your concept works. And then if it feels right, then you go to the VC and say, okay, I have proven the concept, I have traction. Now I want to raise money. And the VC will be very much interested in investing in you. And instead of taking 50% of the company, they'll take maybe 10% because you've already proven the concept.
Okay, so you favor bootstrapping it at the beginning and then only go see the VCs when you have something solid.
Exactly.
Do you think that will slow down the initial growth?
It will. It may slow it down, but at the same time, if you look at all the successful major companies, you'll see that they actually started, just started their company in a bootstrap manner. Like you look at Amazon, look at Microsoft, look at Apple, Facebook. All these companies, they started, without any external investments. And once they prove the business model, then they accelerated the growth by getting external money. And also it's favorable to them because now they have proven the concept. They are the decision makers in the business because they have figured out all the ins and outs of that business, not somebody else, not an external investor or stakeholder. So now when the investor comes in, the CEO or the founder is the expert in that business. So now the founders can call the shots and they can say, hey, this is our company that we have built, and we can only afford to give you this much equity. If it suits you, then fine. If it doesn't suit you, then there are other VCs who are interested. So basically, it becomes a deal for the founders to close rather than for the VCs to call the shots, right?
Yeah, I really like that. So Manuj, when you're looking at a startup company on a tech company, what are some of the things that you need to see kind of to figure out to determine that they're going to be successful or not?
See, any business, any company, the core of the business is whether they're building or producing something that people want and people will pay for. So that is the number one thing. It could be the best technology or the most mind-blowing technology on the face of earth, but if it doesn't serve a purpose, if nobody wants it, or nobody wants to pay for it, then it's useless. Like as a company, it's not going to survive. So the very first thing is figure out, okay, is there a product market fit? And if it's not, then you start to fix that. Once you get the product market fit, the next step is, okay, is the execution good? Meaning, obviously, if the product market fit is there, that means there is a demand. But is the company and the team capable enough to fulfill that demand? So it could be like, okay, there are 100 customers looking to buy this software. Can we build the software to serve those 100 people? And the next step is, now let's say those 100 people are happy, they refer their friends, and now 1,000 people want your software. Can you go from 100 to 1,000 in matter of days? Because as businesses start to scale, and if the idea is good, execution is good, you have to be prepared to scale as well. Otherwise, you will remain at a very a low, a very gradual growth, right? But if you really want like a very quick growth phase, you have to be prepared for that as well. So not only execution at the beginning, but also fast-paced expansion plans.
So I'm a product kind of guy. So when I want to launch a product, I have tools that allow me to check the demand before I launch anything.
So
it's going to be successful or not.
Yeah.
How do you do that with software?
Well, it's pretty much the same thing, right? Like you can use tools like getting feedback from your prospective clients, maybe run some surveys, go to social media, and get some feedback from the users. And there are some other tools that you can use to put some concepts in front of your users and get their direct feedback. There are lots of apps these days where you can ask questions, and just open-ended question. Hey, I'm thinking of building an app for people who want to travel the world, and it's going to have these features. What do you think? And you get maybe 100 responses, and out of that, if there are 70 responses which are positive, that means you are on the right track. So now you need to keep doing that, refining it, and coming to a point where almost to the point that okay, these are the things that people want and they are important to them, and if I can put it together, they will pay for it. And then the next step, once you have that on paper, the next step could be to prototype it, not build the entire app, but prototype it. And then you put that prototype in front of the user and say, hey, I talked to you earlier and I worked on that idea, so here's the prototype, what do you think? And again, if you get positive response, then that means you are still on the right track, and now you can go ahead and convert that prototype into a real project.
How about when people sometimes develop really strong beliefs towards a project that they have in their head? So they believe that it's going to be super successful. what do you have to say when those people are afraid to ask for feedback because they're afraid somebody's going to steal their idea?
Okay, so yeah, so there are a few parts of that question. I'll address both, right? So first of all, this is something I tell every entrepreneur: don't trust yourself, don't trust your judgment, and don't put too much faith in your own judgment. I don't want to be political, but look at U.S. elections. Look at Brexit. Nobody thought that the result that was the outcome of these things will be the right result, right? So whatever the public is thinking out there, you cannot perceive, you cannot comprehend whatever is going on, out there. So if you get too comfortable with your own judgment, I think that's a recipe for disaster. In my opinion. So always be afraid of your own strong opinions and get feedback. It will serve you in the long run. And the other thing is, what was the last part of your question? Sorry.
What would you tell the people that are afraid to share the idea?
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah.
somebody doesn't steal it.
So again, for me, in my entrepreneurship experience, the key thing that people lack is the ability to take action. So you can put a blueprint in front of them and say, okay, these are the steps 1, 2, 3, 4 you need to do. Okay, and also you can give them the people who can help them to take those actions. But it's very difficult for people to take that action. And I used to think that way as well. Like if I share my idea with somebody, they'll steal it. But now I know that there are so many ideas out there. If people have to take action, they can take action. But 95% of the population out there, they generally, as humans, as human species, we are lazy. Like we just want things to happen for us. So if we rely on this human trait, I think we are safe to share the ideas with anyone. And if the person is a go-getter, they'll collaborate with you. They will not stab you in the back because they know execution cannot be done alone. So I feel that if you share ideas, you have better success, better chances at success, because you'll start to build that community of like-minded people, and you will overall it will be a positive effect because of all the collaboration that you can get from these people.
Yeah, I love both parts of those answers. The one that you don't trust your own judgment, because more than likely you won't be right, and the one that people don't take action. And I have the proof of that, because I started teaching a lot of people e-commerce and how to sell on Amazon, and I was doing it completely for free, right? I was just trying to help people, and what started happening was I felt that I was wasting my time, because a lot of the people that got trained for free didn't do anything. And so it was kind of like a waste of my time.
Exactly. No, that's another thing. Like if I've noticed, like if we give something for free, it's devalued. Like they think that it's useless. So so if I give advice and help to somebody for free, generally they will not act on it. But if I charge some money, there's a slight chance they will act on it. But still not 100% there. Only 5%, 10% chance they will act on it.
Absolutely. So do you have any methodology of what you use to build businesses?
For the tech startup, yes. As I said, like I have a framework. It's got about 9 steps that I follow from conception to sort of launch. But other than that, it really depends on situations. A lot of people come up with their unique situations, whatever their situation is, and in that case, I can take a part of that framework and then use it, or I can come up with some more innovations, off the top of my head, and then help them out as the situation demands.
All right. So I know a couple of things about you, and I want to ask you. Like, one is you favor fast execution instead of endless deliberation, and I agree 100%. I guess everybody agrees with that. How about bending the rules over abiding by them. What's your opinion?
Yeah. So once again, this is where I feel that you need to open up yourself, like as an entrepreneur, and take chances. As entrepreneurs, we are risk takers, right? And one of the risks that any venture has is to break some rules. And there are so many rules to follow. There are rules from the society, rules from obviously the legal system, the country that you live in. So obviously, I'm not suggesting break any laws, but try to look for the loopholes that are available, which are legal. Um, Try to not shy away from the rules that society has imposed on you, if it makes sense, and if the public wants it, and you have done the research. I say go for it. I mean, you can push the boundaries, and only then innovation happens. Like look at Elon Musk and some of these big names. If they abided by the conventional wisdom, they will not be able to do things that they are doing, right? It's only when they say, okay, you know what, I understand that people have not done it before, but I'm going to try it. The worst that can happen, will fail, and we'll know that this is not going to work. But if it works, then at least we have crossed a new threshold.
That's the best example you could have used. Elon Musk, he's going places. He's the guy that's going to take us, make us into an interplanetary species, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I hope it happens still during my lifetime.
Well, that's what he's saying. So let's see. I mean, I think he's generally 3 or 4 years late, but he delivers. So he said that within our lifetimes we'll have a colony on Mars. So let's see.
Yeah, it's incredible how he's always the underdog in every project. When he starts it, nobody believes, and then he ends up getting true believers. I guess everybody believes him now.
Yeah.
So, Manuj, tell me, do you have any examples of results that you have achieved, success stories for your clients?
Yeah. So the biggest success story I've had is when I was working with a company called Pearson Education. They're a very big publishing house. They print textbooks for school kids and university students. So back in 2005, they wanted to digitize their platform and accompany their textbooks with digital content. So I was the main sort of technical person who was leading that project, and we brought it from zero to $400 million in revenue within 5 years. It was a very successful worldwide project, and that was, I learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes. But that was the biggest success I had. And other than that, I've worked with several startups. One startup, they were sort of on the brink of shutting down. They spent three years trying to work on a solution. It spent $10 million, close to $10 million, trying to work on it. But they, at the end of the day, they had a Frankenstein of a product that didn't really work, and investors were upset and customers were upset. So I looked at their situation, and then within 9 months, sort of relaunched the whole technology, built 3 products, and brought in revenue and everything. So similarly, there was another company in the wearables space. They spent 2 years, close to, I think, $4 million, and they were not getting anywhere. And then within 3 months, we turned it around and started shipping products to their customers. So generally, what happens is, in all these situations, there is a there is a critical piece that is missing. So it's like the 80-20 rule. So when things are so urgent, you need to look for that that key piece that you can spend 20% of your time, but have the 80% of impact and get things moving again. And once they are moving, once you're getting revenue, things start to ease. Like, as they say, sales heal everything, right? So as soon as you have some revenue, then you can relax a little bit and then give yourself a little bit more time to fix things. But when you don't have revenue, you just gotta figure out very quickly what's the right thing to do to get to that stage.
So when you have a product or a company that for example, like one of those couple last situations that they weren't being successful, how do you assess to see, okay, it's time to actually cut the losses and consider this a dead project, or we still have a chance to save it? How do
Yeah.
you, because that must be a thin line between the two.
Yeah. So once again, it goes back to the basics, right? So if we can do quick assessment, if the customers want what the company is offering, that means there is something there, right? So it's a so that means that there is a seller, there is a buyer, and business can happen. The only thing that needs to happen is whatever is in the middle, meaning the goods or the service that we need to provide to the customers. And if that is the case, then we can salvage whatever the company has already built and figure out how to deliver that as quickly as possible. In some cases, it could be a few weeks. In some cases, it could be a year or so. But then, at least the transactions will happen and the revenue will start flowing. In some other cases, you can clearly judge that whatever the company has built, there are no customers for it, and they're just spinning their wheels and trying to force down this technology into somebody's throat, which is not going to work. And in that case, you got to pivot. So whether you like it or not, if the founders are not flexible enough, then yeah, I mean, I don't know how to handle that situation. But if they are flexible and they, when presented with evidence, they say, yeah, it's time to pivot, then we can salvage what they have and then try to see how we can create something new out of it or something relevant out of it. So and that's also possible in many cases.
That's a great explanation. So how do you go today to getting clients for your own business? What kind of strategies do you use to find your own clients?
I'm still quite new to the whole sales and marketing, and I used to get pretty much all my clients through word of mouth, but now I'm sort of learning, and this is again my passion for learning. So I'm enjoying learning how to execute marketing strategies and sales and all that. So I'm using LinkedIn quite a bit, and I launched a podcast recently. So all these efforts are to put my name out there, as well as just sharing knowledge and experience. So once again, a lot of the content that as we are doing this right now, a lot of this content is available for free, and I hope people get a good advice from this, and they can implement it in their businesses and their personal lives. And just using this, I believe it will lead to better list of clients and more exposure, I think.
So, and as a technology guy, what is one of your favorite tools out there?
Favorite tools? Well, so right now, we are living in a very interesting time because it doesn't happen very frequently that a lot of really, really fundamental technologies come together. So right now, what is happening is you have cloud computing, which is sort of becoming mature. You have machine learning, which has been there for decades, but in the last 5 or 6 years, it has really blossomed. Like it has really become useful for very critical use cases. And then you have blockchain, you have quantum computing. All these technologies are coming together. It's like a perfect storm. So once you combine all these technologies, you can get some really compelling products. Self-driving cars, or rockets that can land back on Earth, or things of that nature, right? So these things were not possible before all these technologies were available. So I won't say I have a favorite tool, but my whole hypothesis is that these technologies coming together, they are going to fundamentally change how we live and work within the next 10 or 20 years, right? The financial systems are going to be affected, how the supply chain solution systems are going to be affected, how we access information is going to be affected. So they are going to have a huge impact on the human race, in fact. So I will say, all these cutting edge technologies are my favorite tools right now.
And what's the difference between machine learning and deep learning?
So machine learning is sort of like in learning. It's like how our brain works is by connecting these nerve cells, right? And then they pass the message from one nerve cell to another. So machine learning, you can say, two nerve cells are interacting with each other. But in deep learning, you can attach hundreds of nerve cells. So each nerve cell gives you more intelligence, if you will. I'm just using layman terms. So if I'm a little bit off the technical precision, please don't shoot me down. So with deep learning, basically, you can attach multiple nerve cells and the system gets smarter and smarter and smarter. And that is the difference. The only thing with deep learning is machine learning can be used for like simpler scenarios, but deep learning is used where you have like, more complex scenarios, like, things like intuition, or things like, it's not a very straightforward answer to a solution. It's like a more fuzzy answer. So when you look at the sky, you can say, the clouds look a little bit dark to me. I think it's going to rain today. So as humans, we have that experience. We can make that judgment. But with machine learning, it will say, okay, is it a blue sky or it's got clouds, right? So it's not very sophisticated. But with deep learning, you can say, okay, these are different kinds of clouds, right? So deep learning system will understand at a very deeper level what kind of weather it is going to be. So that is sort of the difference.
Mm-hmm. Pretty good. And I see one of your skills is blockchain. And immediately when I hear blockchain, I associate cryptocurrencies. And I'm guessing a lot of people that are not directly into it probably think the same thing. So the blockchain, I know it's here to stay, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How about the crypto themselves? What's
so
your...
let me clarify that. So again, this is what happens. Like crypto is just one application of blockchain. Blockchain is sort of the underlying infrastructure based on which you can build applications. And the strength of the blockchain is to implement trust, a distributed trust between parties when there is no higher authority to establish that trust. What I mean by that is, let's say you want to transact, let's say I want to, send you some money. So I cannot send you that money unless I talk to the bank where you have an account, or somehow those banks talk to each other. So there's a higher authority we go to resolve these things. Because if I don't know you, I cannot trust you that if I send you the money, will you send me the goods that I ordered or whatnot. With blockchain, the key idea is that even though we don't have any central authority to establish that trust, we as parties, we can establish the trust between ourselves, and that's the beauty of blockchain. So where can this be applied? Like where things like land registries and transactions where you don't fundamentally trust that people will do the right thing. So as business is happening, or if workflow is happening, you put all the transactions on the blockchain, and then the other thing is whatever you put in blockchain is indestructible. So you cannot go back and change things. You cannot cover up your tracks. So as you record these transactions, you establish trust, and it's there forever. So that creates all these use cases where people can trust each other over the internet, even though they don't know each other. They don't need to go through a bank or higher authority. And one of the applications of this whole infrastructure is cryptocurrencies. Now, I have not invested in cryptocurrencies, even though I know blockchain quite well. And the reason is because I know I have some knowledge of financial markets and investments, and I know fundamentally you need something backing an asset to be able to say, okay, this is an investment that I can make, and be comfortable that it will not just vaporize into thin air. So what I mean by that is, when you invest in a company, there are some assets behind that company. They're making some revenue, and it's a solid business that you can invest in. With Bitcoin, the only thing there is a faith in this currency, and nobody's backing it up. Nobody's responsible for it. And I also know that as soon as these cryptocurrencies become big enough that they start to affect the established financial markets, they will be regulated. I mean, they're not going to give up that easy. All these big giant banks and financial companies, governments. So until that happens, that clarity comes through, where cryptocurrencies are regulated and they become mainstream and accepted. I personally stay away from it, because I know there are other ways to invest your money and make decent returns on that.
Okay, so that's exactly what I thought when I believe it was 2017 when it exploded and it went to almost 19,000 each Bitcoin, and so the whole world had their eyes on this, and that's I started thinking. So if it is going to be this way, that all these financial entities will intervene very quickly.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I thought.
Yeah. I mean, you can imagine, 2008, the whole world sort of came crashing down, and it was the doing of these financial, companies and banks. But instead of getting punished, they got bailed out. So that shows you how much power they have, and they're not going to let go of that power that easily, right?
Of course not. And it's not just power, it's the billions that come with it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, Manuj, tell us about your podcast.
My podcast, it's called Bootstrapping Your Startup Dreams or Dreams. And it's all about, as I said earlier, like I come from humble beginnings. And I think through hard work and patience and some luck, I think I was able to build a decent life for myself. So I just share that experience with others who may come from a similar background, who may not come from wealth or may not have Ivy League degrees. If you use just common sense methods and just apply yourself and do some hard work, I think people can make it. And it's my way of giving back. It's my way of encouraging people to follow their dreams and do what they really want to do in their lives, and not be constrained by any external factors. Because I don't believe, I mean, we create these boundaries around us in our heads. But if you let go of those boundaries and start to look at the positive side of things and just figure things out as they come, there are solutions available more so now than ever. Like you can start to you can build a company with a few $1,000s. You can start a podcast with your iPhone. I mean, all these tools were not available like even 10 years ago. So there is no excuse for us to sit back and just sulk and complain. It's time to take action.
Absolutely, and I love that, because I agree 100%. You said maybe 10 years ago none of this existed. I'd say that most of this didn't exist 5 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
The fact that I could be sitting here right now, you're in Vancouver, I'm in Alberta, and through a podcast that we launched with a couple clicks of a keyboard.
Yeah.
Wow, tell me that life isn't beautiful. That's
exactly. And then I'm pretty sure the kind of information we get from these podcasts. People used to charge thousands and thousands of dollars for this kind of advice. This is really good advice, from people who have already. And I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about the guests that I have on my podcast and other guests that you have on your podcast. They have so much experience. They're sharing it for free. And as you said, like even 5-10 years ago, you had to hire somebody like these people for like thousands and thousands of dollars for just 1 hour to pick their brain, right?
Yes, I completely agree. And you know what? For example, for one of my podcasts, which is the Fail Fast podcast, all entrepreneurs that come over have had a failure story. And just the fact that that person is comfortable sharing their story, right there, it tells me how successful they are right now. Because most people, when they're not successful yet, they don't want to talk about their failures because they still consider like I still living one. But so that means we're getting advice from people that have been there and they have done it and they have gone through ups and downs. And that's what every entrepreneur does. You go through ups and downs.
Exactly.
And when you find what works, then we're willing to share it with the world.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, that's another thing. It just points to that previous discussion we were having. Like, why are you afraid of sharing these ideas? Like, we are sharing all these ideas for free, openly, and whoever wants to take them and take advantage of them, implement them, he or she is free to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So, Manuj, tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find your business, your podcast, and how they follow you.
Sure. They can find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram. So either search by my name, Manuj Aggarwal, or my company name, TetraNoodle Technologies. If it's okay, I can share my URLs. The company URL, it's tetranoodle.com, and a couple of other URLs. If you can put them in the show notes, that will be good so that people can find it easily.
I will. I'll have everything on the show notes. Mm-hmm. So for those of you that are driving, don't try to write this down right now. Make sure you wait till you pull over, and I'll have them on the show notes.
Yeah. Well, unless they are driving a self-driving car.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you have a pen. Manuj, thank you very much. This was
Thanks a lot.
Time with you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was fun.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks for subscribing to Fail Fast Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review and visit failfastpodcast.com for show notes, Quinn's social media, or even to tell us your story.